Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to a Wolfram language design review, part of our incremental language development uh, series. And we have a few topics here, and I think I'm told we should start on the second one, general operator forms.
Yeah. So this is a discussion from a little while ago. The idea was that operator applied and query applied are very useful functions, but for a lot of cases, we have functions where we want to make simple operator forms and we don't want to have dedicated functions for them. And so the notion was to create either a typeset form or an infix form to generate simple operators. And this was an experiment of looking at ways to, this is just a placeholder operation here, obviously with the up T arrow, but trying to play around with the idea of generating operators with an infix form.
Wait a second. So basically, go ahead.
I'm sorry, but my recollection is that we gave up on this idea, that we ran into, it was a precedence issues and we gave up.
That was a different discussion that was talking about lambda function.
Oh, right. Yes.
So these two started as a similar conversation.
Okay, now, so maybe it's better to these are done as infix forms. Presumably, if you had multiple arguments, you'd want to have something like a, as opposed to an infix form, maybe it would be something like you write the function name and then, some sort of star or something like that, and then an open bracket, and then you have the arguments there. I don't know. Just way of doing it.
Basically, the point is all of these things are sort of pop-up function making. I mean, let's take the example, I don't know, let's say integrate, for example. Let's say we want an operator form of integrate, where, we say, now what that really is, here's the operator form. It's hash, comma, x, ampersand, so to speak. The operator form is you feed in the x, and this sort of autofills, and this is what we're trying to, it's yet another, it's a form of pop-up function creation. Am I right?
Yeah, that's the essential idea.
Right. So, in a sense, what we might have is something, let's say we had a prefix operator, just for fun. Let's imagine, because what we actually have is operator applied. What does this do? So how would I do this integrate thing with operator applied?
Wouldn't it just be operator applied of integrate of x?
Yeah, I think you're right. Right. And then that's right. Okay, so, and
right. So I guess if we want this as an actual infix form, right, it would need to have precedence higher than bracket, or you won't be able to just sort of type it in and bracket, which maybe is fine because maybe all we need is symbols on either side of this. But
so the type of thing we would have here is, what would we have? We would have integrate, and then we would have something like star, let's say it's at bracket, okay, x. I don't know that would work precedence wise, but that's the type of thing we're talking about. It's an annotation to this that says this is basically, it's a postfix operator that represents operator applied. Am I right?
Yeah, that's the general idea.
And then an alternative form would be something where there's a subscript to that operator, for example, that allows you to select, different argument structures rather than just this particular case of, fill in the first argument, give the second argument, so to speak. So I think it would be useful to take some, examples of functions. I don't know what, table might be an example. I just worry that, let's say we say table. mean, what would we say? We would say table. See, that this is going to get totally messed up with scoping.
Yeah, there's going to be a lexical scoping problem there, isn't there?
And I mean, so that's not good. Go ahead.
Would we be talking about this if operator applied had a very short name? Like if operator applied had like a 3-character name or something. I mean, I don't have a proposal, but
we wouldn't
maybe that.
Yeah,
because it would just be so easy to write. So maybe the special syntax is might not be necessary.
Yeah, right. So let's say operator apply was just op or something, which I don't think is right, but
yeah.
I kind of agree that would be just fine.
I mean, another weird thing we could do is we could have a symbol or like some sort of weird icon for the head.
Yeah,
as
right.
opposed to, that it's sort of similar to the weird icon for an infix.
It is. We've never really done that. I mean, the only cases, it's a good point. I mean, we have pi, but we don't have, I mean, and I wonder whether our lambda thing could be done that way as well. I wonder whether that would save us from, I mean, it would just be, I mean, it's kind of amusing. We could imagine something where we say, rather than function, just for fun, we have some kind of, lambda x, blah, 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 just as a decorative thing. And
the only problem is, in that case, you probably have to have a special lambda.
A special lambda, yeah,
that
no
means
question. Special lambda, yes. So an interesting question is, could we invent an icon that would be indicative of what this means? Like, for example, could we make something which has some kind of multi-slot, some look that has some, what's a good example? Let's just make, what do I do here? I say new canvas, and then I say.
So another feature, I mean, if this actually worked, I mean, another thing that would be nice is if it would be if it would actually be some sort of ligature, like maybe, well, I don't know. It would be nice if you could type it using some weird string of slashes and stars and stuff, because then it also means that in a text editor you could write it. But I mean, you could write some weird slashes and stars and then have it turn into something fairly different.
Well, right. I mean, it would have a long name, however it's displayed, right? So you could always type in that long name.
Well, and ultimately you could type in operator applied.
Right.
Yes, that's true. Well, but you'd have something that would, in the front end would look like the thing you're going for. But
so the question here is there if we had iconography, I mean, and yes, it would be some kind of weird, bracket star, something like that, for example. And then we represent that as some kind of visual thing. And then we say our integrate here of X. I mean, is this like just irreducibly obscure? I think it depends on what
you wrote it like that, it would be pretty obscure, but yeah.
Well, I mean, so the question is, what's that icon? And is there an icon that indicates that can reasonably indicate? Do we have anybody from design here for any other reason?
Not at the moment.
I can ask.
Well,
yeah, go ahead, Christopher.
So what was I mean, for the infix, did anyone have ideas for what the infix would look like, or was the idea just that there could be an infix?
Yeah, I mean, at the moment when we discussed it, it was just the idea that we could have an infix form. We didn't have a specific
Glyph.
visual in
Yeah.
mind.
And what about something like template box, like escape, grad, escape works?
Escape what?
Escape, grad, escape.
GRAD.
Yeah. And then you have the two places to place the function and the argument you want to carry.
I had no idea that was the way that grad worked. I didn't know what, I mean, that's interesting because we could do the same thing with you know, we could do that, not with this, but we could do that with a lambda as well. You know, if we had FL for a lambda, for a function lambda, you know, let's say we had a thing called function lambda. We could do exactly the same thing. Could we not? And we wouldn't even have precedence insanity, would we? Because we could do whatever precedence we want in this case. So in other words, this will be a solution to making our thing look like a lambda function. Am I correct?
Perhaps.
I'm sorry, you're talking about it doing something like escape del dot. Or I guess you did escape grad there.
Yeah, I did. But I'm suggesting escape FL makes a function lambda, which, you know, makes a character function lambda, where what it does is it's lambda sub x of x squared, for example, or whatever it is. Oh, how does this work with precedence for that? How does that do?
So each slot is a self-contained unit. So I'm a bit surprised you're not seeing any highlighting. Is that 13.1? Because I was pretty sure that I turned on highlighting. So when you're in there, you see that, you know, which slot you're in. So you know whether you're inside or outside of the, right. You want the list if you wanted to actually evaluate in the subscript.
Right, so there's but for the non-subscript part, the part that's written after the del and so on, is that inside of some little box, and like if you press right on your cursor, you'll exit the box without the cursor visually moving or something? Or
correct. And there's supposed to be highlighting, background highlighting, so that you know whether you're inside or outside.
Yeah, there should be.
And I don't know why it's not there, because it was there when I added it and I tested it. So
okay, so that's a bug, so we need to track it down. So Avery, that's for you to go chase.
Yep.
Stephen, you need a vector in the subscript to make this work.
Okay, so this is really nice. I mean, this would give us this lambda thing, exactly what we need, because it has this box, and I don't know what the visual appearance of it should be, and whether it should have a little dotted box around it, which I argue it might. I mean, you're saying even in generic input that this would have a background color or not?
it would be when you are inside of the box. There should be sort of like an instance, just like with an inline cell, you get this shading when you enter the inline cell. There should be similar.
I'm not sure that there shouldn't be some kind of hint of
hold on. I think I may have just lied to you. Right. So that, yeah, what that inserts is not a template box. Those are just sort of raw boxes. But we could if you took if you did hold of that and then looked at the output, which will be a true template box, that'll have the highlight.
but I'm saying this should have some kind of highlighting or indicator of scope here. This is not right that it doesn't do that. And possibly it should even have one, that survives here in the input, right? That actually indicates that this is parenthesized off. Am I making sense?
Right. Well, so right. What I'm saying is I misremembered what this escape sequence does. It does not insert a template box. It just puts in the raw thing. So it has sort of normal precedence things. So if you did like a +2 now, it would, well, I guess, or +X. Right. You got that, right? It added 2 to everything. Right. So it's the first thing.
Yeah, that's wrong. I mean, that's wrong. That doesn't have the I don't even understand the precedence here. So you're saying, okay, there's a precedence issue, but what we're saying is you could have a template box that will properly delimit its second argument.
Yes.
Okay, and I'm saying I think we should consider doing that for this function lambda thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but that does not address the question of the operator applied form. I don't know. I mean, it's sort of an interesting idea. As Christopher says, it's a pity that operator applied is such a long name. Okay, if we were going to make an icon for operator applied, what would it look like? First of all, would this be a subscript?
Wait, I think that being a subscript is too weird. That defeats kind of the point of it, doesn't it?
Maybe so. But I mean, by the time we were going to Jose's mechanism here, it might as well be a subscript. Okay, what could we draw iconographically here? What does this represent? This is saying, so what we have here is, and by the way, what is this? What is this pipe operator thing?
So this was something from one of our customers who saw us discussing this previously and mentioned there's a pipe operator in R that works in a similar fashion. It's a little different than operator applied, but the general idea being that you can pipe data into functions, effectively creating an operator form, but more or less in reverse. So the argument structure is reversed, where you have data piped into function and it gets inserted into typically the first argument.
Okay, so hold on. So what that is a thing where you're saying, okay, so let's just understand this, because this is kind of an interesting idea, actually. So you're saying with this is data, this thing,
function, operator form of function, effectively.
Yeah, but the problem is that that's not an operator.
Is this like / operator form?
But it isn't, because this thing, it implicitly functionifies this.
Yeah.
Right. So what this is doing is it's saying if I have f of x here, what this is doing is, or f of u or something, what that's turning into is f of data comma u.
Correct.
So this thing could be in this model, which I think is a little bit crazy, this could be a syntactically totally scrambled object. Because in our case, I
feel like part of the advantages, one of the advantages of operator forms is just this sort of style of writing where you sort of have a chain of sort of pipeline style. But I think the other advantage is that there are lots of places where you want to be able to have one of these functions and manipulate it, put it in the first argument of map and then put it, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think having something where this is not really operator applied, it's just sort of another syntax for function application, which I think is maybe not, it's a different thing.
Look, this is a syntax.
Like there are no curried functions involved, right? It's just a syntax for doing function application.
Well, it's implicitly doing some kind of weird, not really currying, but look, what it's doing is it's taking, to write it out, it is data, and then we've got what is it? I can't think about it. It's this thing here is implicitly created. And then how do I do that with @ or /*? Is there any way to do that? How do I do that? If I do this, what does it do?
I'm not sure if the precedence is right.
What the heck should that do?
Well, it should be inert because it's just you haven't actually applied it to anything. Are you thinking of //?
Maybe I am thinking of //.
Right. Otherwise known as the difference between function application and composition, which is similar to the issue here. This is a syntax.
And you don't actually need the parentheses in this particular case.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But
So
the point is
issue,
that that's the difference between the arrow and operator applies. The arrow is actually doing the application and evaluating as opposed to producing a function that you can manipulate.
right. So what this is doing, I mean, look, what's happening here is that we've got an implicit I've got another question about yet another form of function. Okay, although I agree that this is getting a little silly. But let's imagine that you could type something like this. And that this is a function that is merely in the brackets argument list. Did that make any sense? So, I mean, a syntactically local form of function.
I think we discussed this even with the dot last time, or maybe not last time, but a while ago.
Yeah, well, okay, is it crazy? I mean, but I think I hadn't really internalized the idea that it will be purely, i.e., it is, it's reminiscent of nothing, okay? i.e., it is just, okay, look, for example, insert here, comma u. It is just a top level element of an explicit bracket function.
So two questions. The first question is the basic point of this to save the one character that is an ampersand? And the second question is, what about g of h of q of f of insert here of 2? If that makes sense. Like, what if the insert here is deeply buried in the head?
No, then it doesn't do it. Just like nothing doesn't work in that case. I mean, this wouldn't.
I feel this is basically just
this is very bizarre and right. This is unstable and very counterintuitive.
Well, nothing isn't unstable.
No, but that's because nothing is nothing, and this is not nothing. And I think this is like
well, nothing. Right? I mean, some might disagree about whether or not nothing is unstable. But even if we were to concede that point, it's only not unstable because it will only ever fire inside of list unless you manually tell it to fire inside of other things.
Right, but what I'm suggesting is, perhaps a bad idea, but what I'm suggesting is that, okay, so let's take our integrate example. What I'm suggesting is that you would write this, integrate this, comma, x of x squared.
Right. The problem is that I think that this is basically just, it's saving a single character over normal pure functions at the expense of, well, one, adding another syntax for doing functions, which I think will be kind of confusing, but also the fact that it's going to be so brittle and it's going to break in so many different situations. And you're going to write something like this and then you're going to modify it. And now it's going to stop working because you added an extra level of function around the integrate, and it won't be obvious why that's a problem, et cetera, et cetera.
I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. You're saying that in the head case, like this, that it then wouldn't work.
Yeah, I mean, just stuff like that, where it's not really, like, it's never made clear where the pure function is. And so it can only ever work in some really restricted case. And I think it's just going to lead to so many weird problems.
However, I mean, this does lead me to one kind of syntactic beauty type thing, which is maybe there should be an alternative appearance for hash. I mean, or alternatively, we could just make hash as a ligature. I mean, I've wanted this for ages, actually. Make hash as a ligature not look. I mean, this whole thing just looks so obscure. What if we ligatured this to something a little nicer? Like, for example, one thing I've wanted with this is to make it much more like a, much more like a placeholder box with a few little tentacles on it. I think that would really help. I mean, I think that would make our functions just look, it's kind of obvious what's going on then. Whereas if you see a hash sign, it's like, I don't know what the heck that is.
I think
for
the
example,
ampersand is also just
Right,
as
but
big
what
a
about
problem.
what about pound foo, pound 17?
We could deal with all of those. I mean, like for example, hash foo, we could imagine putting that inside, which would be rather nice. I mean, this one is rather easy as well. This one is just two boxes next to each other. I mean, now that we have programming ligatures, we can do stuff like this.
Mm-hmm.
I really rather like this. Maybe we could. Can somebody see if Jeremy happens to be available?
I can do that.
While you're doing that, can you do me a favor and go back to where you had the grad?
Yes.
And select it and do Shift Command N.
Let me make another one.
Why did that happen? Is it because those are placeholders? Oh, yeah. Okay.
Now look
What
you've got. Yeah.
Yeah. So now it has the. So
only
now,
when I click. No, only when I click inside that placeholder.
Yep. Right. So now So now if you did x squared plus 2x, then it would, list xy and then x squared plus 2x. You would know, where you were.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, that's good. That's nice. Why didn't it do it on initial input?
Because that keyboard shortcut was created well before we had that capability in template box. So it puts in, so it's just putting in a subscript, a literal subscript and some placeholders.
Maybe we should change it.
That's worth thinking about.
Okay. All right. But anyway, in okay, coming back to this, if we wanted to beautify ampersand, I mean, I think we've talked about this before, and I bet we could make something that is more like an opening mouth type thing that has the same basic structure as an ampersand, but it's just more obviously like applying a function. See what I'm saying? Right. So I mean, the idea.
So let me. Will the slots be ligatured like this, even if there's no ampersand?
I would assume yes.
Okay. And then, I mean, my main concern is if we get too fancy with this, right? How will people ever know what to type in?
I agree, but that's been an issue with dash greater than for millions of years, and I've been surprised at how little of an issue that's actually been. I thought that would be a killer. And I was thinking, in documentation, we should always show it as dash greater than and so on. But that's been surprisingly not such a problem. But I agree, it's got to have some indication of, what it is. But I don't think it needs to be, I mean, like what I was imagining here was.
Is that why in documentation notebooks, I think dash greater than doesn't ligaturize? Is that intentional?
Yeah, that was intentional.
Yes.
Oh my God. Okay. I thought there was a bug for like years.
Well, it may be wrong. I mean, it might be the wrong thing.
Right.
No,
Well, we
I
certainly
don't
can't,
know.
right. We certainly can't turn on auto ligatures because of all the documentation that tells you how to type things in, right?
Right.
So we certainly couldn't turn on auto ligatures before we updated all of those instructions to not auto ligature, right? Because it would be kind of useless to say, type this in to create this symbol if you just see the same symbol in both places.
Where am I looking? I was looking for a partial bow tie. A bow tie with one side missing.
That's under the equals, I think, tab near the bottom.
I'm not seeing any bow ties here at all. It's gone informal.
Special character.
Well, I mean, it's kind of okay. Let's use this one just as for the hell of it. I mean, that's not really what I had in mind, but I mean that's not really what I had in mind. But what I was thinking about was something where it's kind of like, where it's sort of an opening on that side. Hey, Jeremy, we're talking about beautifying. It's an old topic. We're talking about beautifying functions, and we're talking about as a ligature type thing, replacing hash signs by squares with little tentacles on them, and replacing the ampersand by something that looks more like a thing that is kind of like a bit, it uses the fact that in an ampersand, there's kind of that opening on the right-hand side to make something which looks like it is a thing where this is like trying to eat something, if that makes any sense. Jeremy here? Or did I just...
No, I'm on mute. Sorry about that. No, the concern is, are you worried about people's ability to type this, right? So
yeah,
we have
I know.
this with other
it
characters.
Just came up.
Yeah.
I mean, but there might be ways to handle that. For example, one thing we haven't thought about is we have an increasing number of hover effects. And we could imagine something which says, which hovers and says rule or function or something, paren, and then how to type it.
Yeah. But you just look at code and just have to weigh how foreign it's going to look. And
I know, but like, for example, the big win along these lines has been dash greater than.
Yeah, yeah.
Because people don't get confused by that, and yet it really makes code look a lot nicer.
Yeah.
And I mean, and now we've got also the function thing, which I use with some frequency. I mean, look, the other case that maybe is a story. Okay, here's a question. This is something that this form, like, for example, in the EIWL book, I don't really talk about this form, yet I'm kind of beginning to think that form is a better version of map or for each or whatever you might call it. And I mean, no, there's probably nothing there. It has to have almost as much syntax as this, doesn't it? Because it has to have the variable as well. I mean, in other words, look, what we've got right now is map function x f of x, and then we can apply that to ABC, and we get that. But now the question is there any way of minimizing this? Like for example, we might have something which says, I mean, okay, we could imagine, I don't know if this is a good idea, but like something like, map function x f of x, and then this. Is that useful or interesting? Just it's such a common thing to want to, and this seems like a rather backward syntax for this. Is this making any sense to anybody? I mean, anybody think this is a good idea? Does everybody think this is a bad idea? Anybody?
I think I'm mostly confused at this point. What is the idea that you're asking about?
Okay.
It's map and function together, basically, right? It's map where you don't have to write the ampersand. I think look, you can do this in fewer characters by writing the operator form of map. It's just map of f of hash ampersand is the same as your map function there.
I know.
And it's more readable and it's less obscure. And in fact, it's even simpler because it's just map of f.
I know that. But I mean, okay, if we had this be this slightly more, box-like thing, which I thought I had suggested ages ago, and I don't know why it never happened. Jeremy, you know what I'm talking about? I mean,
I do. I remember that. Yeah.
Why did we never do that? We should do it.
Yeah.
We should do it. And similarly here, we should stylize the ampersand in some way so that it looks like a sort of attachment device, which it doesn't look like right now. It just looks like an ampersand. But I'm sure there's a way to distort the ampersand so you're kind of, so those pieces are like, it's like an attachment thing. Like for example, I don't know, I bet if you pull an ampersand into Photoshop or something, you could easily make it so that you just pull its little pincers up. Am I making sense? You take these two parts and you pull the pincer part up to the middle so that it's more symmetrical. And I think it's still going to look like an ampersand, but it's going to look like a stylized ampersand, which also looks like something that can eat a function argument. Did that make any sense?
It does. I'm kind of sketching on paper now. It'd have to be really distorted.
Yeah, I'll offer the following possibly pointless comment, but in a sense, right, this is an anti-ligature, right? Because presumably when somebody types in ampersand for and, we'd want normal looking ampersands, not this modified ampersand.
Yes. Yes. I mean, okay, so I was just, yes, that's right. But I mean, so in that sense, it's an anti-ligature. So, okay, so what I was thinking here was something.
We're always talking ligatures. We could look at, I think there's some things like I think Coq, the proof assistant, has, if I remember right, they have like crazy ligatures, like things like double ampersand turns into a conjunction sign, stuff like that. Like, everything turns into some weird symbol.
Does it work, or is it really horrifying?
I mean, I haven't used it enough to know. I know that it looks kind of funky because you have all these Unicode characters, but I don't know if it actually if it's too confusing for people.
Yeah, well, the thing I just drew doesn't work, but
I think in general, though, I mean, the ampersand is a totally random symbol to use for this, so it sort of doesn't.
Well, I know, maybe we can
tragic to distort it. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So maybe we can make it into something which makes it seem like it makes more sense.
Can we have a version of ampersand for a hold function too?
What do you mean?
It's like, I find it pretty useful to use, like, how do you put attribute hold to a function, right? You have to write a function as a symbol, and I use it pretty often.
But you're saying function x, f of x, hold.
Yeah.
That case.
Hold all.
Yeah.
Hold complete.
Right, because you got to pick one of those.
Yeah. And maybe like some ampersand version for those can be useful.
Well, I mean, if we're going to Unicode ampersands, then okay, actually, Ethan is commenting here. What about a special paren to signify a function? I don't think that quite works, because the problem is it needs to be a ternary. You can't. Let's say we had, whatever it is, something like this. Well, it's not going to work. Whatever. Let's say we were just using this. You've still got to have this, and then the f of x.
Actually, I think I remember. Wait a minute. We talked about this like a few weeks ago, or like a month ago or something, when we were having a very similar discussion. And one of the ideas was to have a function notation that was stylized brackets. It was like, bracket, vertical bar, for the open, and vertical bar bracket for the close, or something like that. And the point is, that way you'd actually indicate the scope, unlike with ampersand. So you'd say that of X, or of, whatever you want. Or not even that, like that's something much weirder you've just written. There are two things you could do. So the first thing is just to have, bracket, vertical bar, f of hash, bracket, vertical, vertical bar, bracket, whatever.
F of hash.
I mean, I'm just making up a bracket thing, but some stylized bracket, and that would be equivalent to f of hash ampersand.
I see what you're
saying. It would make the scoping more clear. And alternatively, if you did want to support some 2-argument thing, you could of course have a comma in the middle. So you could have, bracket vertical bar x comma f of x.
That's interesting. I mean, because it is true that that's the problem that we have in all of the right-hand sides of options and all those kinds of things. It's a precedence problem, which would not happen if it was match fix.
Yes, we talked about this though before in another ILD meeting or something.
Nick, do you know?
Yeah, that's the conversation I was referencing at the start of this discussion. I said, didn't we conclude that?
All right, so let's enumerate the issues here. Okay, let's just enumerate what we're talking about. So we have got possibilities. Oops, I don't want to use that. Possibilities. Okay, we've got beautify, hash, and ampersand. That seems like a thing worth exploring, regardless of any of these other things. Another possibility is, then there's the function lambda idea, like grad, which I think also is worth exploring. I think, let's see, then what else here is worth exploring? We also talked about the possibility of a form for operator applied, which was okay, so beautify this. That probably means we don't have to consider another possibility here is additional characters for hash, e.g. some kind of box type thing, or this, just to make code look nicer. That's auto beautify, hash, and ampersand. Okay, so then we've also got the possibility here of match fix function. And by the way, that might be a convenient way to deal with Nick's issue, because you might be able to do, well, I don't know whether that's okay, there's a separate issue, which is special syntax for held pure functions. Okay, so match fix function, which I think is also worth looking at, because that would finally solve the problem forever of options and things like this. Okay, none of these are all possibilities for function, and now possibilities for operator applied. Which we didn't really address here, except implicitly, because if we improve function, operator applied becomes less important. Do you agree?
Yeah, probably. I think there's still cases where it's sort of there's an elegance to using operator applied, but yeah.
Okay, well, fine. But I mean, then what we've thought about for operator applied is a prefix, single character, pseudo prefix.
It's not a prefix. It's just another.
I know. Right. It's just like it's single character, pseudo prefix, i.e. like pi. Right. In other words, it's just turning into something equivalent to operator apply. It's just that there's a thing that behaves just like operator applied, but we still don't know what that. I mean, the question is, what does that look like? Is it something which has, it's.
Let me break out my APL book.
Yeah, does it? It
So
has
that's sort of
like
where
that.
we're going. I mean, that's sort of a joke because I think it's a bad thing when you break out the APL book for syntax suggestions.
Well, that's a good question. I mean, APL has a lot of interesting ideas. And
Syntax is not a winning one.
no, I mean, many aspects of the syntax were just hopeless. I'm just looking at an APL table here. Oh gosh, I remember that one. Multiply by pi. Yeah, grade up and grade down. Those were okay. That was crazy. That was, what the heck is that? Okay. That's some of these are just completely bonkers. I mean,
These are also rendered in a much more reasonable way on Wikipedia than they are on the book.
well, okay, let's look at the dyadic case because that's
But okay.
the value of polynomial. No, that's crazy. Yeah, because a lot of these operators, like the prefix exclam is a factorial and the infix exclam is a binomial. Does it have, wait a minute, this is the stuff, right? This is plus dot times is its way of doing inner product, right? What is that? Right, I don't really know. Okay, so I don't think it has this particular case. Does it? It doesn't have a way of taking, I think it didn't have, because it didn't have the notion really of a pure function, I think.
Yeah,
Just
it looks
look
like
up that
there's
J language uses ampersand as an infix for carrying.
What is that? What do you mean as an infix for carrying? How does it work?
I don't know really. It looks like it's using it. It's like you use a function on the left of the ampersand and the argument on the right hand side. And you can, and this indicates an operator form.
Wait a minute. You do what? What do you do?
Hold on, I'm confused.
yeah, I found yeah, on the examples, I can't tell at all what's going on.
Can you paste an example?
Well, I can't even find one that's that good. It's just on the Wikipedia page. They, there are a couple mentions of ampersands, but it's like totally unclear what they're doing, what's going on. It's just like a string of random characters.
Like if you want to halve a number, this function is going to be like divide ampersand 2. And ampersand is like an infix form.
Oh, is it like our tildes? Like when you do, tilde join tilde, that's an infix form of join.
Yeah, I wonder whether there's anything more we can do with this, because, I was very proud of this idea 35 years ago, and I do occasionally use it. But again, that's another thing which we could ligaturize better.
What's the precedence if you do x tilde f tilde y tilde z or something? Like just have what you already have there and then add another one.
I think it's left right.
What if you make an odd
It's
number?
not. Hold on, but wait a minute. It's not. What the heck did that just do?
No, it was left right. It was
Okay.
left right. But now give it an odd number. Get rid of the z.
It'll be a syntax error.
Okay.
Although it's a particularly obscure syntax error because nothing pinks in the actual input. That's
Right,
just
because,
wrong.
because only the kernel can actually parse these things, right? As far as the front end is concerned, right? This is
You know what? The user assistance
flat
system
operator.
should put a caret here. It should put some kind of red tilde caret thing here. It's just wrong.
Well, it may be wrong, but this would have been done in 1996 if it were easy to do.
Okay, but I think it should be fed into the user assistance discussion because I think it should do something like that caret. And I would suggest some kind of tilde with a caret underneath it, a red tilde with a caret underneath it or something, or tilde followed by a caret or something. I mean, this is not a common case because people aren't using the tilde thing very much. And again, in terms of the let's make this more elegant, now that we have programming ligatures, we could turn the tilde into a different Unicode character if we wanted to. And I think we should. And Jeremy, I think that's another thing for you to try and figure out what can we make, this thing. See, we could even make the two tildes not be exactly the same. We could make them be similar, but not exactly the same for what it's worth.
What's the difference? Why are they different?
Well, because what's happening is it's taking f of x and y. I don't know. I mean, look, the most common case is something like join. I mean, I've used this plenty of times to make the code look nicer when I'm writing this.
Yep.
And honestly, that doesn't look that bad. I mean, it's just the tilde is just a little bit obscure looking. I mean, it could just be made a little bit more elegant, and that would work fine. Okay, Seth is pointing out on a live stream that the main issue is having to parenthesize ampersands. Yeah, I mean, I agree, and that's an argument for a match fix version of function, because then you don't have to parenthesize anything. I mean, in the end, with that parenthesization, you can't win, because that precedence is, it's boxed in by a bunch of other precedences.
Could you write an example maybe where you have like a string of, I don't know, a string of compositions, and then in the middle of it, you have one of these match fixed functions. I'm just wondering if it would look nicer than than it looks right now with ampersand.
Okay, so you're saying compositions like this.
Yeah. And
okay.
Some of them will be operator forms and some of them will be whatever they are.
Okay, so let's say the one of these is in the middle. So this is a H of hash. I mean, it's not going to look very good because the spacing is wrong here.
Yeah, can use square brackets instead of rounded, brackets. I think it might not space so much. Or never mind.
I can make it a text cell.
Yeah. I think you can also do Command 9 to make it look nicer as well. But yeah.
Why would
or like in the text cell, you can style it as Command 9 and then it'll at least be the right font and stuff.
Okay, but anyway, this I don't think this looks obviously bad. I think it looks rather nice, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, if we I mean, especially with our auto-closing mechanism, having a composite there is not as painful as it once was, because that auto-closes. Right? You don't have to type. And the ability of one of these things to auto-close in the right place is going to be much higher by it being a composite character. Well, I kind of agree we should look at this. What is the right form, though? Is it this? Is it bracket vertical bar or what? Anybody got an opinion?
I mean, are there any symbols that are actually like, right now we use ampersand. I argue ampersand has really nothing to do with functions. Are there any symbols that do have something to do with functions that could be used?
Brackets.
Well, sure. I mean, brackets are also just generally used for match fix things. So I think brackets are fine.
I think we have to have pairs, something that pairs, and that we basically got angle brackets, square brackets, braces, and or parens.
Yeah. I think angle brackets are probably a bit too big. Well, I guess with things like
angle brackets are
associations,
used for associations,
smaller,
but I mean, I think I would kind of favor the parenthesis case. I think it's more because I think the bracket case is kind of the wrong way round, because this thing is making something that can have a bracket after it.
Yeah, the only thing is that I feel like parentheses are, and you're sort of trained to think that parentheses are ugly. I mean, that's why the parentheses with an ampersand is ugly. Because if you think about that, that's one fewer character anyway. Just having parentheses and an ampersand.
I know.
But it looks ugly because it has parentheses.
I'm not convinced, but that's possible. Dan is commenting on live stream that it should be a way to highlight what expression is being bound by an ampersand. Absolutely. That was supposed to make it into 13.1, but I believe it did not. That's a user assistance thing. That's for, you know, this whole thing was supposed to show a temporary parenthesis here to indicate what's going on. That is absolutely been intended for several versions and is coming soon. Just turns out to be harder to do than you might think. And that will certainly help prevent that kind of mistake. All right, I think we should explore this. I think we should explore the match fix function. I think we should explore auto beautification of hash and ampersand. The function lambda thing is amusing and maybe is worth exploring for people who want to make something that is very lambda looking. I don't know. What do people think about that? Deafening silence.
Of these possibilities, right now, I'm thinking that having an additional character for hash and for ampersand, perhaps, is my favorite. I'm thinking of the situation with and. When we do hash and hash, we get the logical and. And I like that, because for inputs, it looks very nice.
Sorry, what are you talking about?
Yes, if you do a
escape.
and then escape and escape, no, and letters. B.
Yeah.
Right? So that's something else that parses to and. And so if we had something for hash and perhaps something that typesets as a very little ampersand, that plays also the role of function.
Yeah, but why not do it automatically? I mean, we don't need to have a special. That can happen with the ligatures mechanism. That can happen automatically when you just type the thing and it becomes a function.
But in a sense, we want to control where we put the ampersand. It's just a matter of what we put there should be something that is the ampersand, but typesets slightly different.
Sure, but it can happen automatically, right? And as soon as you type the ampersand, it can format as some other character or a smaller ampersand or whatever else. That's what the ligature mechanism does.
I see what you mean. Okay, so that would always be the case. I was thinking of something in which you can choose to do that representation, like in AND.
No, I think it would always be the case. I think it's what we want to do, just like dash greater than always does that.
Okay.
All right, look, can we please look into this match fix thing? Can we look into the auto beautification thing? These additional characters, I don't know. I mean, I think it's a question of how well we can get the auto beautification to just work. Am I making sense? I mean, you know, I just don't know what the choices are. I mean, I think dots and boxes and things are good things where they are placeholders where you put something in there and we just have to decorate it with legs so that it looks like a hash sign a bit. And maybe now that we have fonts that, you know, we can, by the time we can do emoji, we can do gray fonts. So we can do something where the box has tentacles that are gray, for example. Does that make sense? So, okay, I think we're this topic. Anything else on this topic? We haven't solved this, but we've got definite directions. Nick, any further comments on this?
No, I think that gives us a good baseline. I'll try checking in with maybe John about it just to see what his opinion on it is as well.
Right. And I don't think we're going to have time for much of this, but
how go back to the first item, Danny?
Yes. Okay, fine. I just want to ask about this WFR promotion efforts. I mean, as WFR expands, like for example, there's one recently added by Brad, this nest while graph function, which I rather like. And I think that's one we should consider. And I'm just kind of wondering, would that be picked up automatically by the procedure that you have or not?
Yeah, I mean, Danny can maybe talk more about the procedure, but yeah, we basically do a regular polling of the new functions. They get evaluated, and then they go into a queue to get triaged. This is, for example, oh, go ahead.
I think the answer might be not in that case, though. It would depend on whether we recognized on the WFR end when we do the assessments, whether it's very much akin to nest, what's the nest graph while or something like that.
No, there is no nest graph while. It's a nest while graph is a version of nest graph that doesn't just go a fixed number of steps. It has a termination condition.
Got it. Okay, so it's, yeah, I did not know until Brad told me that we had a nest graph. If other people on the WFR team were aware of that when we did the assessment, we might, and we have not yet gotten to this one in the assessments, but you know, under different circumstances, if none of us knew that, we probably wouldn't think to promote it. We would think, well, this is a very niche function. Yeah, even if it's a good one.
Right, I understand. I'm telling you, I think that one is useful.
Yeah, no, knowing that, yes, we will, of course, but you know, put it forward. But in general,
it's part of a bigger picture that Nick is working on, but it's just one particular case of that I think is useful. But anyway, okay, what are we talking about here?
Well, a few things, but I would say naming the thing and going back on the design to something actually, you know, sensible and not crazy. Because we painted ourselves in two or three different corners, none of them particularly close to one another.
Okay, so position largest tells you simply the position with varying degrees of festooned, you know, with braces and so on.
Right.
The position of the largest element, or the position of the largest element by something in a list.
Right. And there was a lot of controversy over the nesting of the braces, in part because position would seem to imply a position spec. And I'm thinking the more you know, and I actually did implement all the craziness at one point, but I'm thinking this isn't what we want. What we want is to just return the indices. We want them grouped. I think everybody agrees with that, you know, so that the different ranks are separated. But other than that, we don't want all the nesting that position would entail. I think that was a bad idea. I think it sidetracked us, and I think this could be an actually useful function.
It is useful. I do it all the time. I mean, it's position of max of whatever, you know, I write it a million times. You know, it's extract of, well, it's the,
yes,
you know,
it's the extract.
Well, no, but you're not doing the extract. You're doing just the position.
Yeah, right. What I guess I meant was it would be a spec for an extract rather. Do I have it right? Extract versus part?
Yes, you have it right.
Okay.
Position returns us an extract spec. Right. So what you're saying is that this is more like an index.
Yes. Yes. Indexed largest would be a
we have such a can of worms because we've got map indexed, which actually takes a position spec. And we've got this supplied headdress. Okay. Does anybody have an idea here what to do? Because, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think Danny is right in that when we initially looked at this, we wanted a pretty simple function that was give me the position of the max value. And
yeah, that's what we want.
Which is basically what Danny has proposed with position first largest, or.
I know, but that name is just not going to make it.
Yeah.
I sent email about this. Let's see, in roughly a little over a month ago. And I had some particular possibilities to suggest. If you want, I can go over them.
Tell us what they're, can you just show them?
Show them. Let me share.
That or No, why don't you send them in chat? It's just a list of names. Or
Okay, the names I can put in chat. Okay, hold on.
but I mean, the key idea is, just like we have things like ranked max and so on, maybe we have I mean, I don't know, max. I don't know what the right,
Yeah.
I mean,
one possibility is just to leave the name alone. Return a part spec rather than an extract spec without the extra listing. One possibility is to go through all the rigmarole with an optional argument, which is what we have now,
no,
and I don't like it.
Find largest. Okay. No, that's simply not going to work. Largest ranks indices. I don't get it. I mean, argmax. List argmax.
Yeah, and by analogy with argmax.
No, I understand the idea. I mean, that's interesting because it gets us out of the box of
Right. The one thing I didn't like about it is that argmax itself mentions position, but I think it's lowercase. I mean, yeah, and it's a, I think, lowercase use, not the position function.
Right, because it's giving
some continuous
position
value
on the real line. But right. The other nice thing about list argmax is that it makes it very clear that this is a level 1 thingy.
Yes.
Yeah, well, that's a good point.
But what about this case here? I mean, this is argmax is such an obscure name, though. But I like getting us out of that box. I just worry that it just is a cognitive jump. You're reading a piece of code, and argmax is one of these things you see. Sort of it's machine learning papers seem to be full of argmaxes.
Well, optimization papers in general used to be, maybe still.
Why do they stop?
I'm not sure they have. Maybe I just stopped reading them. I don't know.
I mean, argmax was a thing that sort of emerged about 15 years ago or something as a thing. You'd never seen it before.
No. It was in literature. Going back
more than 15 years.
Yeah, 30 at least. Okay. In optimization.
Okay. We don't get to have an argmax by, and that it's really obscure. Let's think. That's terrible. Largest. What are the words? The words, the description is gives the index of the. See, but it doesn't give the index. It gives a list, doesn't it? Because it doesn't know whether there's a single largest index.
Right. List max indices is another permutation of these that I did not put on here, but it's not argmax at least.
Okay, but this gives a list of the indices. But then is there some other argument that says how many of them?
Yes. So it's actually a list of lists.
And why isn't it doing take largest by? Doesn't give a list of lists. It just puts them in the order of.
That's right. However, we don't have the notion of separating ranks. We're not giving a number of ranks. We're just giving a number of elements.
And why aren't we doing that here? Here, are we giving the number of ranks or the number
Well,
of
I mean, because if we do that, then we just have, it just boils down to take largest with whatever goes to indices. The functionality that I implemented is actually something different, and it is not trivial to get.
Okay, well, so we've also got things like, I mean, commonest is a good example of something where where it has an unexpected listification. I mean, it's not self-evident that something that will ask for the position of the largest. I mean, this is the obvious name, except that it has the wrong number of braces for that.
Position largest, yes.
Yeah, that's the obvious name.
Yes, and that one of the proposals I had was go with that name. Don't care about the bracing,
especially since it's got another form of multi-bracing.
Yeah.
We have first position, so perhaps what we are looking for is a first position largest.
Yeah, except that the bracing is again different because first position.
Right. First position gives you one thing. It doesn't give you something other than a extract spec.
Oh, but look, it's in braces as well.
Exactly, right? Because it gives you an extract spec. That is the full extract spec for that position. Right? First position is basically first of position with a little bit of sugar around that.
Look, the only name that anybody's ever going to understand is position largest. And the fact that it has weird bracing, I mean, it's got to have weird bracing because of the multi-rank issue.
I don't even know that I would consider it weird.
Well, fine. Maybe position largest is the right thing. A position largest. So it's position largest, and then it's a count of the ranks. Is that right?
Yes.
So sorry, is it does this function work like, position is a level spec? Does this
No,
look deeper than level 1?
It does not.
Okay. And what's the objection to calling this index largest?
What's that? Say that again.
What's the objection to calling this index largest?
Because I think that's an incomprehensible name, because I think that the word index is one we haven't used consistently. And I think index largest, just, position is something people understand because it's used all over the place. And the fact that this returns something with slightly different bracing, it's just pedantic to call it something different, I think.
I'm fine with that argument. I mean, I did propose indices largest, but I
don't think
position.
It's right. Yeah, I think position largest is the right thing. I'm concerned about this. I mean, the ranks thing is weird. I unfortunately need to go. I have another live stream actually coming up. I think we should go with position largest
Okay.
guy and try and work out what the consequences of that. All right. Sounds good, everybody.
All right.
See you later.